Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Robison, and welcome to the Still Faithful podcast. I am the founder of the Still Faithful Project, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, Master Sergeant Daniel L. Pendergast, Client Systems Specialist, 265th Combat Communications Squadron, based out of South Portland, Maine, Air National Guard Station. As the active Guard reservist for Client Systems, he is responsible for ensuring the functionality of all client-based theater deployed communications equipment and the Joint Incident Site communications capability equipment, being a liaison to customers of said packages to aid their mission accomplishment, directly and indirectly supervising the training of multiple airmen and assisting the traditional non-commissioned officer in charge of client systems with the management of the shop in between unit training assemblies. He's also the non-commissioned officer in charge of the South Portland Air National Guard Station Honor Guard. Master Sergeant Pendergast enlisted in the Air National Guard in June 2012 and graduated Client Systems Technical Training in January 2013 at the top of his class with a GPA of 98. Prior to his enlistment in the Air Force, he had been honorably discharged from the United States Marine Corps Reserve at the rank of sergeant in May 2007. While in the Marines, he had deployed twice, serving the first time in support of the global war on terror in an alert contingency battalion in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and then on a unit deployed program to Okinawa, Japan in 2003, and the second time supporting Operation Iraqi Freedom in Fallujah, Iraq in 2006. Master Sergeant Pendergast is highly decorated and joins us now to discuss this and his experience with the COVID mandate.
Thanks for having me.
Master Sergeant, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Obviously, not quite a master sergeant these days, though you very well know why, and all that was what my position was before the unlawful mandate, unfortunately.
Right, absolutely. I'd like to start by asking you a little bit about your early life and what led you to a career in military service.
Absolutely. So I was a military brat to start with. My father actually flew B-52s for many years. He was a major in the Air Force. Unfortunately, lost that career because of a heart attack. Don't smoke, kids. But he finished out his 20 years as an engineer because he had gotten his engineering degree from Cornell before going to flight school and retired as a major after 20 years back in 92. That being said, you'd think I was in the Air Force, he was in the Air Force, that's a natural progression, but then you throw in that little side stint in the Marines. How that came about is when my father was talking to his kids, I have two older brothers, he always said, if you ever consider going into the military, give the Marines the first consideration because they are the only branch that truly is focused on winning wars. And having been in both the Air Force and the Marines, I can say absolutely true. The Marines understand leadership and their number one goal is mission accomplishment. They want to win the war. So that's how I ended up going into the Marines. I went into the Marine Reserves because I wanted to go to college as well. The only Marine Reserve unit in my state, which was Maine at the time, was infantry. So I ended up going into the infantry and getting a few odd looks because I was way overqualified for it. And it didn't surprise too many people when I went back in that I chose to do cyber instead.
Absolutely. So was that the main driver that led you to the Air Force from the Marine Corps was getting that technical experience and trying to translate it?
Yep. So I call my first enlistment my God and Country enlistment. I feel like service is something that any citizen should do. And since I was able, I did it. Then I got out of the Marines in 2007 and finished up my super useful degree in music performance. And I can sing, I can shoot well, and was a track and field athlete back in the day, none of which actually qualify you for good paying jobs. And I always wanted a family. So I'm like, okay, so I've got all that out of my system. I've done my service. I got my super fun degree, wouldn't take that either back for the world of me. But how am I actually going to pay for a living? So that's what brought me to the Air Guard. Said, okay, I'll still be serving, but this time let's let them actually give me some actual marketable skills. So I saw an ad on Craigslist of all places for the Air National Guard and applied, got in, and within 2 years already had a federal technician position and was full-time from 2014 until I got pushed out in 2021.
Right. Okay. That kind of leads me to the next set of questions is, I guess before we get into the pandemic stuff, do you want to talk about a little bit about your time in the South Portland Air National Guard?
Sure.
I mean, like in that specific station, like what was the command like when you first got there compared to much later when mandates came down?
Okay. So when I first got there, they were, in all honesty, a little bit hedging towards the stereotype of a National Guard unit. They seemed a little bit laissez-faire for the first couple of years, but then the commander changed out, and I've got to hand it to now Colonel Kamari. He had an absolutely dogged work ethic. He really had a lot of pride in his job, and I was proud to serve under him. He was a great commander, and I'm glad that he's continuing to move up the ranks. It's always interesting seeing the interplay between active duty and National Guard. I would say that I have a little bit of a skewed perspective from from most National Guardsmen who serve, though, because I was so active in my additional services. Whereas you mentioned the Joint Incident Site Communication Capability Package, the JISC. I'm not going to say that whole thing all over again. I'm just going to say JISC.
No, thank you for giving me the acronym.
I basically had two full-time jobs. One full-time job was client systems, which is the Air Force fancy speak for help desk, which in and of itself is a little bit of a misnomer because we ended up also kind of being the communications focal point. So you start off, with the end line help desk functions, and then you end up being like the central node of it all. So it's an interesting transition from kind of least important to most important from the comm perspective side. But it actually is a natural progression. But that was one of my jobs. And the other job was to manage. And then I was later the NCOIC of the JISC as well. And that kept my ops tempo very high because we'd be running ops with the New England Surf P. We're doing those trainings. We'd do responses to emergency events such as Hurricanes Maria and Irma. We deployed down to the Virgin Islands. And then I worked my way up to being a subject matter expert on it. So the NavAir, the POC for the whole package, actually asked me to get sent to other people's trainings to help them, which is actually a little bit funny because on the JISC package, there's no client systems position. I kind of barged my way into it as like, this is an awesome package I want in, and I made it work for me.
Fantastic. So you would be considered an invaluable asset to that unit.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Okay. So I had a conversation yesterday with Major Gary. I believe he was a former colleague of yours.
I worked closely with him. That New England Surf P that I mentioned, he was the commander of it for many years. So I worked very closely with him.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, I bring him up just to link y'all in proximity to each other. Obviously, you were both invaluable assets to the command and those units. It makes me wonder, getting into the pandemic, how was that treatment? Was it any different from the command? How did that go?
So most of my issues weren't from my local command. Now, that being said, Colonel Kamari, then Lieutenant Colonel Kamari, had been deployed to Germany, and the acting commander was a little bit softer on things, shall we say. He urged me to take the shot to keep my pension. And there was indications that if I fought this, he was not going to have my back. Had Colonel Kamari still been there, maybe I would have stayed in and tried to fight it. But without your immediate commander giving clear signals that he understands why it's unlawful, and I explained it to the major who was the acting commander, and he just, it all kind of like, yep, but orders.
Right.
Well, no, we have a duty to not obey unlawful orders, and I just explained how it's unlawful.
Right.
So, without having my immediate commander giving me a sense that he would also fight for me, I was in the position where I was an active guard reservist and I already had a satisfactory year, and where the decisions ultimately wouldn't actually even be made at the command level. It would be the director of the Air National Guard ultimately deciding your fate. I had no faith. I had no faith that that was going to be honored. So when I saw an opportunity to avoid the persecution that would ultimately come down from higher. I took it. I said, "This is not a fight that I can win today. I'm in IT. I have a family of five. I can't afford a bad conduct or dishonorable discharge. I won't be able to provide for my family." So I had a satisfactory year. I said, "I'm resigning my AGR position." They said that they were allowing it as a favor to me for my great service, and then wrote out the rest of my contract at the end, which ended the next year as in a status leave of absence status.
That's something that Major Gary brought up in our conversation as well was the leave of absence status or the process in which if you wouldn't get the shot, they wouldn't allow you to come back to drill. If you miss a few of those, then they discharge you, right? They get you for AWOL.
So,
I know that's
yep.
different, but
So,
it's
yeah. So they had me sign, I want to say in September, it might have been October, but I think it was in September. They had me sign that I was not obeying lawful orders. And I said, A, it's not a lawful order. B, I have a pending religious exemption. How are you saying that I'm disobeying lawful orders when I have a pending exemption? I'm not required to take it pending the exemption. So how is it a lawful order when I have that exemption? So and I've since been told that because I left the way I did, gracefully, they specifically did not review my religious exemption so that they wouldn't have to prosecute me.
so that they wouldn't have to prosecute.
Yes, I have been told by an officer who was in the chain who was reviewing the religious exemptions that he was told specifically to not review my packet so that they wouldn't have to prosecute me. That puts the language on the default position of we're rejecting it and prosecuting. They assumed that they would reject it and prosecute it. You look at the language of the Religious Freedom RFRA. I forget the full acronym off the top of my head right this second, but you look at the RFRA law and the default position is you're supposed to honor the airmen, the soldiers, the Marines, sailors' wishes unless there is compelling national security reasons not to. So it's completely flipped. Their default was we're going to reject and prosecute, not we're going to honor unless there's a compelling reason not to.
I see. So, man.
Yeah.
So, so what kind of effects? I know there's going to be some obvious ones, but what kind of effects has this had on your personal situation and your family? Like,
Well, I mean, I am divorced now. I'd love to say that obviously the financial stress was the only cause, but there were other issues. I probably would have gotten divorced anyways, but on the same side, when you're struggling with money, it can make things worse. Would I have been able to save my marriage if I'd stayed in? I don't know. Probably not if I had to guess, but it certainly didn't help. I took a $34,000 pay cut leaving my AGR position. I had to take a couple loans from my TSP. I managed to pay off one of them, but I wasn't able to pay off the other one. So that triggered a tax penalty on that. I mean, it's a lot harder when you don't have the job and the income that you had been planning on for a career.
right. Absolutely. Yeah, I can imagine. Well, I don't have to imagine. I
Yeah.
went through the ringer financially too myself in different
Yep. Yep.
ways. Well,
Yeah. No, I was in all honesty, out of a lot of the stories that I've heard, I had a blessingly soft landing because I'd had an emergency fund. I sold my house in Maine and moved down to Tennessee where the cost of living's a little cheaper and that Maine housing money stretched a little further. There's been some lean times. I can't quite have the same standard of living that I had, but all things considered, I'm okay. But doesn't make it right.
right. No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. It is wonderful that you did have the relatively, like you said, soft landing that you did, but that can't mean that you know, trying to get recompense has been very easy. Would you mind explaining a little bit about that process, what you've been through there?
So it has been a process. So when the president issued his executive order on January 27th, I submitted a letter to recruiters per the Section 2C statement requirement. I submitted a statement to them saying, hey, I want reinstatement. Here's what happened. Um, then there was a lot of radio silence because they had 2 months. They were given 2 months to iron out the process. They didn't really do anything over those 2 months. Because when April 1st came, DoD released a new policy, and then within the week, the all the branches basically just copied and pasted and said, "Yep, this is the policy." Like, guys, you were supposed to do more than just copy and paste what the DoD said. There's more to it than that. And those are other people's stories. I will leave it to them. They have those who have been reinstated, like Janine's husband Travis has the gold standard for story on how all that flushed out about how they didn't actually do the work that they needed to. But for me, the Air Force came out and said, hi, so you voluntarily left service. Here's a form that you need to fill out. And on the form, it says, not only are you not entitled to back pay, but that I left the service freely and without coercion. No. So I think I might have actually been the first one in the nation to receive that form because I was aggressive, assertive on the spot on it. And I don't even remember how I found Jordan Carr, but I got it to her and she blew it up. She got Laura Logan on it. She managed to get the DoD to acknowledge it, be like, whoa, whoa, okay, there's a problem here. The DoD response page actually acknowledged we've got a problem, Houston, and at least got the worst of the language removed from that form. But the point being, there, right from the bat, the Air Force was like, we were not wrong. We're doing you guys a favor, and you need to say the things that we need you to say so that we're not indicted as the bad guys here. And I edited the form. I changed things like voluntary to duress, got rid of anything that I disagreed with, and submitted it anyways. Um, from then, I finally started getting recruiters talking to me after the big Air Force, the AFRS, Air Force Recruiting Service, said, hey, guys, you actually need to engage with him, because before that, they were basically ignoring me. I had actually tried to reenlist back in November and had no traction whatsoever. They called me once and just ignored me. So I started trying to do the line with the recruiters, but I hedged my bets. And since the Air Force guidance said, hey, submit a 149 if you want to receive additional back pay, back credit, other things. So I did. I did both of them in basically concurrently. Well, the recruiters played a few games, said, hey, we're waiting for guidance, back and forth. We don't really know what's going on, even though I sent them all the guidance from the Air Force, all the guidance from the DoD. They're like, yeah, well, we still need our guidance. So then come to find out on May 2nd, NGB finally gave them guidance. And NGB's guidance was anybody who was voluntary is to be treated as a normal prior service. That means no restoral to rank, no restoral to service status, no back pay, no back service credit. You have to go through reaccession standards. All the DoD guidance said retention standards. And National Guard Bureau straight up gave them guidance insubordinate to what the DoD gave them. I showed my recruiters again all the DoD guidance, all the Air Force guidance, the presidential executive order, and said, the orders that you are telling me are in conflict with their orders from higher. They said, we'll need to talk to JAG about it. To this day, I don't know if they've ever talked to JAG. So long story short there, they did not schedule me for a physical. They didn't do anything. They just said, we need to talk to Jag, so we're not doing anything further.
Well, I want to talk to you a little bit about that too, because
Sure.
one thing I've noticed about through talking with people, of course, this is one of the first interviews, but I've been on the phone the better part about 2 months or so, just nonstop with individuals. And one thing I've run into is it seems as though the Air Force in particular has been the most resistant to any sort of well, I don't want to use the word accountability in this sense, but any sort of recourse or
Yep.
reinstatement. Is
So
do
I hate to
you
pause this.
Yeah.
My phone just alerted me I'm running out of battery. I don't want to do this. I'm gonna grab a charger real quick, and will be right back. I am so
Okay,
sorry.
I'll pause it, no worries. Okay, and we're back. Okay, so yeah, the Air Force seems to be the most resistant to any sort of recourse. Um, I remember when we spoke on the phone, you had mentioned in your reinstatement process, trying to get a particular position to maybe help that effort. Is that still something that you want to talk about at all?
So that might be jetting ahead just a little bit because
Oh, okay.
that's kind of where we're at right now. So let me just continue with the timeline a little bit, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that was at the beginning of May. Um, so the BCMR had received my paperwork on April 16th. They didn't open the case until May 20th. Well, about a week later, after they finally opened the case, they said, we can't do anything without you having gone through MEPS, which the recruiters had done nothing with because I wasn't playing their game. I told them that what they were doing was wrong and they did nothing to help me. So then I've tried to get a MEPS appointment, tried to reach out to AFERS because that's what the process said. AFERS said, well, you need to go to your recruiters. Recruiters didn't help me. So I ended up calling MEPS directly and said, hey, I need this. The BCMR says they're going to close my case if I do not get this. And MEPS actually called my recruiters and said, what are you doing? Get this guy an appointment. So I finally got an appointment on June 16th. And lo and behold, they MEPS screened me under reaccession standards. And then the recruiters, as already mentioned, screened me under normal prior service standards, which were reaccession, and they called me disqualified for 4 different counts, which is really funny. The most obvious of which was I had had PRK eye surgery back in 2007, and they were saying I had a refractive disorder. Um, the surgery that I had in 2007 before I got in the Air National Guard in 2012 and had told you about in 2012 is now disqualifying. So I went back and forth with them some, said, hey, yet again, I can prove you're not using retention standards. Here's the orders. Here are the retention standards. You're not following them. And they said, well, we'll need to talk to Jag. So I initiated a congressional inquiry with Senator Blackburn's office. That took until July 10th to resolve. And basically, NGB told Senator Blackburn's office, oh, he inadvertently didn't get screened as a COVID reaccession. Inadvertently, huh? Yeah, okay. So then they resent the medical package to the Surgeon General's office, and the Surgeon General's office cleared me on July 17th. However, the recruiters never notified me of this. I asked them for an update on July 24th, 2 weeks after they admitted that they were wrong. didn't provide me with an update. The update that they had gotten a week previous and were doing absolutely nothing with. I waited a couple more weeks. And on August 5th, I reached out to Colonel Watson at Headquarters Air Force, whose contact was given to me through the COVID OSD email. I reached out to her saying, it's been a month since I was cleared medically. Nothing is happening. Can I get an update? Well, Colonel Watson reached out to the National Guard Bureau. National Guard Bureau said, oh no, we're keeping him updated.
Are you though?
Are you though? I specifically asked for an update that you had a week previous and you didn't give it to me. And then magically they started working the process again on August 8th after Colonel Watson had engaged with them. So National Guard Bureau straight up lied to a colonel at Headquarters Air Force saying they were keeping me updated. And concurrently, I was still providing additional information as I got it to the BCMR. Come to find out, the BCMR actually reviewed my package on August 7th. It was independent, but it's like, good thing I'm pushing on this, because if I hadn't been engaging on both sides, it would have gone nowhere. Or it wouldn't have gone anywhere. Let me correct my double negative there. So then they reviewed my package, and from August 7th until October 30th, it took that long to work through the board, even though they had already met. It took that long to work from the board to the Secretary of the Air Force. And the Secretary of the Air Force signed off on just carte blanche on the board's decision, saying, yes, absolutely, reinstate him. But his AGR tour was his initial tour and ended in 22. We cannot assume that he would have been held on as an AGR, so we're going to count him as a drill status guardsman for the rest of the time. Okay, so what are the reasons why I would not have been held on as an AGR? Force management, force reduction, not an issue. My position still exists, so they can't use that as a reason why I would have gone away. What are all the other reasons why I wouldn't have gone away? They all implicate that I was an unsatisfactory airman. Basically couldn't do my job, or was fat, couldn't hold fitness standards, was non-deployable, none of which applied to me. They had already had in their packet a recommendation from Colonel Camary, who was willing to write me a positively glowing recommendation 4 years afterwards. He wrote me a recommendation. Colonel Camary is now the director of staff at the Maine Air National Guard, not an inconsequential position. Took the time to write me this recommendation, and they still implied that I was bad at my job. So I took some time and sourced statements. I now have statements from my former chief enlisted manager, my former the state command chief for the Maine Air National Guard. And what I hope is the coup de grace, the former TAG wrote me a letter of recommendation, all of them saying there's no way he would have not been an AGR. The only thing that kept him from continuing to serve as an AGR and excel was the COVID mandate. So I just submitted that in an appeal on Monday. And getting back to your point now about what position I'm looking at to try and fix all of this that I'm seeing happening is, previously I'd said I want to work with you. I understand how hard an AGR spot is. I'm willing to be reinstated into a drill status spot because I'm a master sergeant. Master sergeant AGR spots don't grow on trees. I understand force management. I understand that's a hard thing. I want to make this easy on you. I want to serve. I want to be back helping. And let's get it done. Let's get it done swiftly. Well, because of the insubordination that NGB never got called to task for about the normal prior service, because of the deception to the Air Force, and then because the BCMR wanted to directly imply that I was a bad airman, on top of the COVID mandate having happened to start with, I said, okay, you know what? I'm in Tennessee. The Air Force leadership schools are at McGee Tyson, an hour away from me. Where I can do I was trying to let you guys do this the easy way and figure out where you best need me. It's become plainly obvious that where you best need me is helping at your leadership school. You need somebody who can actually teach the next generation of airmen, NCOs, and senior NCOs how to have moral integrity, how to do the right thing, not just save your pension, not just whip some papers, but actually make the hard decisions, stand up for your personal beliefs, stand up for the Constitution, stand up for the rule of law. So I imagine they're not going to be too happy with that, but the president did order that I should be reinstated with no impact in my service status. And in the board's decision, they do acknowledge that my service status was an AGR. So I don't know if they'll restore me to a spot in that leadership school. I'm going to be lobbying hard. I just contacted my state representative to start getting a line open to the governor to because National Guard is a state entity as well. I'm going to be writing letters to President Trump and probably to Secretary Hegseth, basically saying, here's what I've encountered. Here's who I am and what I've done. Help me help us by putting me where I can do the most good. And that is at the leadership schools, in my opinion now.
I think so too. Obviously, you were invaluable to your unit while you were in. For them to imply that you were anything less than that is actually insane. And then,
Well, I was actually recognized as the state of Maine Air National Guard's non-commissioned officer of the year in 2018. But I was an unsatisfactory airman.
right, yeah, that guy's a bad airman, right? Yeah,
I
don't.
don't want to make this about my ego, but at the same time,
Well, it's blatantly, it's recorded,
you don't get to imply that.
right? Yeah, don't pee on my boots and tell me it's raining. Um,
Exactly.
well, I'm sorry, I got sidetracked for a moment. I believe that's the best place for you too. That I think I'm a believer that one of the main things we should be focusing on is getting good leaders back in their positions or positions of power in the military so that we can undo some of this madness. This is one of the main fronts in what is clearly a lot of different battles going on right now. Um,
There's a culture war.
right. Yeah, culture war, color revolution. There's a lot of words for it for sure.
It's a whole different topic.
Right, right. And we don't have to get on that. I'm just making some connections in my head. So we've talked about the position that you uh should be in. Um,
Yep.
as far as um other individuals that are seeking recourse or to be reinstated, do you have any sort of I guess advice, for lack of a better term, for people like that. Um,
Yep, definitely. So, number one, read the policy, not just what the recruiters send you. Read the April 1st policy, read all the memos that Undersecretary Tata has sent out. Um, Inform yourself because the recruiters in this process have not informed themselves. You need to be able to tell them this is what you are lawfully obligated to do. It shouldn't be that way, but it is. No, and when they come back with you with something that doesn't smell right, get them to cite exact parts of law and regulation of why they're saying what they're saying. Uh, I was advocating for another airman who was trying to be reinstated, and they were saying that she couldn't return to her job position. And the reason why they were saying that is because of entry standards, which again, entry standards are not retention standards. So you have to keep it honest. And sadly, you have to not be afraid of going nuclear. If I had not been able to prove that the Air Force and the National Guard Bureau was not following the Secretary's orders, they wouldn't have gone to bat for me. And had they not gone to bat for me, my reinstatement would be dead. I would be not physically qualified. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200.
that's
Funny
you know,
fact: one of the four reasons that I would be physically disqualified is for my back, which the VA gives me a 0% for. Because doesn't that isn't that just the way?
it's just the blatant bureaucracy that I'm not, it can't help but just make you laugh at how ridiculous it all is. And that's what it comes down to is it's all just so ridiculous. It comes down to ego and people that don't want to admit that they were wrong, essentially. That was a very distinct um, impression I got from
I
Major
mean,
Gary's case.
we have the orders from the president. We have the orders from Secretary Hegseth. They weren't in the chain of the mandate. Once you start getting into people requiring people who enforce the mandate to start with to then make us whole, they don't want to do it because that necessarily implies that they did something wrong. And they, to this day, don't believe they did.
And that leads me to the question about accountability. Now, that's a wide term that gets thrown out a lot. It means a lot of different things to a lot of people, a lot of different people. I think, of course, accountability is something to be administered like a medicine where it's applicable to those that it applies to. But it seems on the outside like there hasn't been very much in the way of administering any sort of accountability. Um, from my perspective, it almost feels as though at the beginning the team came in and thought, okay, Dad's home, everybody get in line. But I don't sense that that's where we are. I'm curious to get your thoughts on that.
So yeah, no, there. The way I've put it is there's a lot of DoD resistance within the DoW. Um, there, a lot of what Secretary Hegseth has said are home runs, hitting it out the park. But the appetite to force the military to follow through with it has been lacking. I mean, you have people out there, great sleuths out there picking up language that the DOWs putting out now that strips gender language out. I thought we were done with all that. You have no accountability for COVID and the COVID mandate. Well, you've acknowledged that it was unlawful. If it was unlawful, you have an obligation to find out who broke the law and deal with it. Even if to deal with it is to say, hey, we have figured out this person here, this person here, this person here were the primary ones responsible for it. But in the interest of the force, we are going to pardon them. Even if that's the decision, at least announce that decision. Me personally, I would like to see the heads of the JAG, the heads of the medical, and the heads of the command. Three people per branch, three people per branch actually brought up on charges. And anyone else who enforced unlawful orders given a formal letter of reprimand saying you should not have enforced unlawful orders.
Right. And
I
I
don't,
think that's
I
a
don't, I don't think I don't think that's too draconian in the
no.
slightest. Will it happen? I have no faith that anything even remotely close to that will happen.
Right. Not unless it's forced, not unless somebody has the will to do it.
Exactly.
You have to
And
drag them like children kicking and screaming, it
yep,
seems like.
yeah. Even the ones that are supposed to be on quote unquote on our side, the ones who issued us to be reinstated to start with, it's been hard to get them to actually come to bat for us. Well, you issued orders. Why are you not seeing them through? Why are you allowing your orders to be disobeyed?
Uh-oh. You still there?
Yep, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
I can. Yeah, I guess the video cut out.
Sorry.
Um,
I think it actually gave me a heating warning. You take it out of the case, let it cool off a little bit.
oh, no worries. I thought it was maybe my connection. I live out in the sticks and sometimes I have issues when it rains.
No, so just in case you lost the last bit of what I was saying, it really doesn't like me. It's overheating. So we may have to call it a wrap today.
Okay, no worries. Master Sergeant Daniel Pendergast, thank you so much for doing this. Um, I really appreciate it, and we'll have you on again because of technical difficulties.
Absolutely. I appreciate your time, sir. You have a great afternoon.
Yes, sir. You too. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Okay, that was our episode with Master Sergeant Pendergast. Um, Outstanding individual. One of the first to be able to read through the tea leaves and really understand what was happening to them. Um, People like that are exactly who we need in leadership positions. Outstanding individuals that can critically think. They need to be in schools. He needs to be in that school in Tennessee, teaching the next generations of enlisted. That's just exactly where he needs to be. Um, you can follow him on X at Daniel Pendergrast. Um, he posts regularly there, updates on his situation, and I hope to see him get given everything that I know he's owed. The same goes for Major Gary and anybody else that I'm going to have on the show. So these are the real life stories of people whose lives were affected by this. So it's not just some faceless blanket number that you heard about on Fox News, and it's certainly bigger than 8,000. These are just the past two episodes were just two of them. We have a lot more to cover. But that's what this is for. It's for sharing your story. Let us know what happened to you. Let us know what recourse you're trying to go after or what ways you're trying to make yourself whole. And if you don't want to talk on camera at all, join the Still Faithful Project today. Do it anyway. It's a good community. Link up with each other and feel not so damn isolated because I know I felt pretty damn isolated not too long ago. And I won't say that I don't completely now, but I have purpose. And this is it. Daniel Pendergrass has purpose. And we know where he needs to be. We know where Major Gary needs to be. So make it happen. Let's go, Air Force, National Guard. Yeah, TikTok, you're slacking like really big time. I don't know what the disconnect is, but I'll save my comments on that for another video when it's just me. For now, thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I know the subject of this video appreciates it as well. And yeah, share this to everybody. Start talking to each other or me. It's necessary. All right, see you next time.